it's a place called Exhibition Hub,
Mhm.
and Walt Disney Archives has opened up its vault of various film treasures, props, art, um, tons of great objects. Some of the Disney crown jewels are on display in
100
this
years. Is that crazy
incredible
to think
exhibit.
about?
Yeah, it's
A
a really great.
100 years.
It's interactive. It's fun. It goes all the way back to things like the original Snow White and the Seven Dwarves, all the way up to current Disney stuff, and even Pixar, Star Wars, and Marvel. It was a great time to go see this exhibit. I believe it closes this weekend.
Oh, all
So,
right. Well, if you're listening to this, you only have probably hours, maybe a day or so to
right,
check it out for
maybe
yourself.
if you're
Is this a
lucky.
traveling exhibit? Is this something that might be going elsewhere?
It's going to Kansas City next,
Okay.
and it's currently on display in London. But that's as far as the reach goes. So, the Midwest gets to experience the fruits of Disney's labors. And it was a really cool exhibit. It had all these great classic Disney artifacts, like at the beginning of Snow White and the Seven Dwarves, they have this book that opens up. And they have the book prop
Oh,
there, and you
wow.
could look at it and see all the detail and lots of costumes from and artwork from classic Disney films like Peter Pan to the Dalmatians to even newer stuff like Encanto and things like that.
Did
But
you and the whole
we,
family go out there? I know
of course,
Dylan
of
is a
course.
big Disney fan.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. He was definitely in his element at this exhibit. So I shot some video of the Star Wars display, and I wanted to share it with you.
Hmm.
We have it going on right here. This is, you see, this is the entire display. It was about what, four or five, six different little things like Han Solo's dice from the Solo film.
All right, I
Here
got
I
to
try to.
pause this because I want to know. Okay, here it is. This is the Orabesh dice,
Is it?
right?
Is that Orbish?
That's the Orabesh dice, not to be confused with the original dice. And I only say this because I'm a proud owner. The original dice maker, this was many years ago, prior to the sequel trilogy coming out. The original dice maker of the dice that were seen on the Millennium Falcon in A New Hope, they were just traditional dice. They were gold, obviously. But Jim, do you remember this when he went out online and said, hey, I'm going to recast these just for a limited time?
Yeah, I remember you guys
And
jumping.
we
I
jumped,
didn't. I personally didn't, but
we got a set, and they were cast out of the same molds. And what's interesting about this prop is that at that time they were traditional dice, like the dice that you would find, with a board game, in the sense that it has the, the one dot, the two dots, the three dots, etc. And then when this became a thing with The Force Awakens, and by the time they showed up on The Force Awakens, they were these Orabesh dice. So they were sort of redone in a way. But so yeah, these are the Orabesh dice, and they show up again in Solo as well.
Well, Orabesh didn't exist as a Star Wars.
Right.
Pause it for a second before
Yeah.
we get to the Porg puppet. See, I go for the detail here. I'll give you some great zoom ins on some of this stuff. But the Han Solo dice, Orabesh didn't exist at the time of the original Star Wars film. You actually see English letters on certain things like the tractor beam controls that Obi-Wan adjusts. That's in English. I think Orabesh came about for The Empire Strikes Back, when I think the first time we see it is when Luke is flying away from Hoth with R2 in the back slot of the X-Wing fighter. And Luke starts talking to him, and you can see the readout on the screen of what R2 is saying. That's the translation of his beeps and boops. And it was in Orabesh. And it's been that way since the original release in 1980. So that's when Star Wars. I would love to know actually the origins of Orabesh,
Hmm.
who actually came up with the design. It's an original trilogy design, I
Sure.
believe, for the most part. Maybe it was just random stuff at
I
first, and
always
then
I
somebody
always thought
developed it into an actual
it,
alphabet.
exactly. I always thought it was a bit of a response to Jim, if you recall, back in the 80s, the early 80s, that's when Klingon first became kind of
Oh yeah,
considered an actual language, and linguists were brought in to expand it. The
right.
Klingon dictionary came out, and I always thought that Orabesh was sort of Star Wars's response to
Mm.
Klingon.
I never felt it was the response to Klingon. I felt that way when in the expanded universe, in the Karen Travis novels, she had devised a language for the Mandalorians
Oh,
called Mandoa.
that's
And I
right.
always thought,
Yes.
I'm like, now there's your response to the Klingon freaks in Trekkiedom. Which I was one, I got the audiobook, How to Speak Klingon. I got that.
Oh, you get a degree in it in some universities.
That's true. That's true. Now I never sat and listened to try to learn it. I got it because it was funny for radio bits. It's true. It's
I
true.
can only imagine. So there's an audio book version of the Klingon dictionary. Wow.
Ik tak, doek zak, bloek blak. All right, let's get back to the
Okay.
Disney
all right.
100 Star Wars exhibit. Here's a Porg puppet. And when I see these things, Star Wars props, I love to look at the detail.
Yeah.
And so when I'm shooting video, I zoom in big time to really get a feel for the craftsmanship and the detail and everything. And here we see the dead black stare of the eyes of
Yeah.
the Porg puppet. Now here's BB-8. This is the real centerpiece of the exhibit.
Now, I'm going to
And
pause
once
here
again-
just because I have an affinity for BB-8 because, Jim, do you recall back at Star Wars Celebration, one of them, right before The Force Awakens came out,
Yeah.
we happened to be looking at some of the displays that were there. And just as luck would have it, as we were looking at the BB-8, we knew nothing really about BB-8
Right.
at the time. I think maybe we'd seen the teaser. That was pretty much it. And some of the original, or some of the guys that had worked on the original BB-8 puppet, or excuse me, model, robot, were working on the display when we happened to be there. And we chatted with them a little bit. And I remember one thing that came out of that was they kept, calling BB-8 a he, so we knew
Yeah.
that BB-8 was a guy, was a dude. But what a treat that was! That was really cool. So I always feel kind of an affinity for BB-8 because of that sort of serendipitous moment we had.
Well, it was a funny moment because I think they were the guys who are the actual performers of
Yeah.
and it's a puppet. It's a puppet. It's on these they attach these handles to the thing and roll it around. And I mean there is a model that can be used via remote control, but a lot of the times it's just these puppeteers who are guiding it around, and all of that stuff gets painted out digitally.
Right.
So these guys were in there. Yeah, they kept referring to BB-8 as he. And I remember at the time on the internet, there was a lot of talk about BB-8 like shifting genders because they changed the sound effect that accompanied BB-8. At first, he had a very different sound. And then they switched it up to more of a chirpy, beepy thing. And people are like, oh, BB-8 sounds like, I mean, it just sounds absurd to say it. BB-8 sounds like a girl now. And so people are saying that. And, but the guys kept referring to BB-8 as he. And so I said, masculine programming? And they were just like, oh, shoot, we've said too much.
I remember that.
Yeah, they were all weirded out about it.
They
But
were.
I think whatever BB-8 does have the masculine programming. I
Sure.
think he's
But
referred
just how cool that we just happened to be in there at the time that they were
That
working
was
on that
crazy.
display. Yeah.
That was crazy. And it was a cool thing to happen. So I zoom in. I want to see what BB-8's little radar eye looks like, and there's a lot of detail in there. And you see the artificial scuffing and aging of the droid all around it. This is the work of artists. It's not actual usage. Maybe some of it is. Here's a cool thing. It's those books that Ray had stashed away, or she found in the hollowed out tree trunk on Act 2. Here's one of the books they actually had on display. It's like looking at, the original Bible or something. As we
Wow.
zoom into it, very dramatic. But you see there's a lot of detail there. And it's the craftsmanship of these props are outstanding. Here's the Skywalker lightsaber hilt from The Rise of Skywalker. This is the one that was split in half in The Last Jedi and soldered together by Rey. And they had a full First Order Stormtrooper set of armor on display. So in my video, I zoom in, I get a real close look at what's going on with this First Order Stormtrooper. And I get down to his shoes and I see he's wearing Keds that have been spray painted. Yeah, that's what you get, very high tech.
Look at that.
They won't notice on the film. Yeah, but guys, this stuff becomes museum exhibits after a while. You got to really tighten it up.
I remember when people called
Keds
it
that are spray painted.
They called
all right, and there you have the whole display. But there was this one other cool thing at the end. It was like this hall of mirrors that was showing all of this Star Wars, all these Star Wars visuals on it. Clips from all films of the trilogy.
Look at that,
and it was a real trip to walk through this thing and experience it. Of course, the sound.
This is like Jimmy's Dreams. If you ever wanted to know what
this
it's like
really
to be
is.
Jimmy's
Yeah. The Hall of Mirrors, and there's the statue of Walt Disney with Mickey Mouse, and that's the end of the tour. So it was really a lot of fun. Yeah.
So would you recommend this if you're in Kansas City or in the
absolutely
in the market for something like this? Check it out.
It's great. Also, I mean, just, the Disney history is very thick throughout the whole exhibit, and you see a lot of things that you'll connect to just as a person. And it's a great walk through the entire timeline of Disney, from the animation to the live action to the parks. It's all the music, the sound effects, everything is very heavily represented in this thing. More than 250 artifacts, works of art, costumes, props, just amazing memorabilia. It's a really, really fine display. And I knew it would be of interest to us as Star Wars fans to see some of the Star Wars props they had on display at this thing. So always a thrill. I would have preferred a little more original trilogy stuff in there. It was all prequels, but you take what you can get, and to see it all in the flesh, in person, is very impressive.
Yeah, it's always a treat. It never gets old when you see that stuff. The exhibit they had, the Mandalorian exhibit that they had at Star Wars Celebration Chicago, was just out of sight. Anaheim was, I think, probably, we said it was, at the time, it was the best collection of exhibits for any as far as all those artifacts, just absolutely incredible. And it helped it was out there in California where they shot the show, so it was easier. But it doesn't get old. It doesn't get old seeing that stuff.
No, it doesn't. And I was getting similar vibes from seeing this particular exhibit. So if you're in the Chicago area this weekend, today or tomorrow, get over to Exhibition Hub and check out a cool Disney exhibit that features Star Wars, also Marvel. There's Marvel stuff there. I saw Captain America's shield.
Oh, wow. Excellent.
Very empowering, very empowering. So it was a great time. Yeah.